All right, welcome everybody to the YouTube channel. Today we have Nico Hessel here to talk about his journey from quite literally being homeless to building an agency to $15,000 a month using Upwork. Nico, welcome to the channel.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Michael.
Well, that was a pretty interesting intro. I'm excited to get into that. But before we get there, first off, I like to ask everybody the same question. What got you into the agency space?
Yeah, so I was a college athlete and then got injured, had to essentially stop playing soccer, which was my sport. And then I always knew I wanted to make a bunch of money. So I kind of got into online business because I knew I didn't want the restriction of working for somebody else or set hours, set location. Found Iman Gaji and kind of went down that rabbit hole and then just started an agency. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
So the agency was your first online business.
Yeah, pretty much.
You know, most people I talk to, the agency is like the fourth or fifth thing they do. So I'm kind of impressed that you just jumped right to that. Because normally the story is like, yeah, I failed at like 5 dropshipping stores and then I started an agency or something along the lines. So what made you isolate an agency is what you wanted to do?
Yeah. So, I mean, I will say, like, I did try drop shipping for maybe, I don't know, a week or so. Like, it was not a very, I definitely wouldn't call it a business venture. But honestly, I decided on the agency because I just saw so many people succeeding with it. And I figured like I'm a pretty smart guy. I like to think I'm pretty competent. And so if everyone else is succeeding with this, I felt like there was a fairly high degree, fairly high chance that I could as well.
Yeah, I like the thought process. Simple, makes sense. Well, sweet. Another question I like to ask everybody, because I think it's very interesting to hear the different responses, is what did you do for your first client?
Oh yeah, that is a good question. I ran Facebook ads and the company made custom saunas. And so a very like kind of weird niche, but I ran Facebook ads for this guy for to generate leads for him.
And you got him from Facebook ads as well?
So so what did I do to get him? So okay, gotcha. I was doing cold calls. So that was kind of my initial
Nice.
outreach method. Um, I found it really tough, like having to convince a prospect that they need my service and that I'm the right guy to deliver it was super tough. So I probably made 7 or 8,000 cold calls one summer
Wow.
and signed one client. And so, and it was my first one. So granted, like the first client is always the toughest and it was awesome. Like it really started the upward spiral, but yeah, that's how I got him.
Now, one thing I want to just like take a moment here is you mentioned you did thousands of cold calls. Because one thing I see very often, people will hire me for a consult or join one of my programs or just talk to somebody, and it's, yeah, I've been trying for 7 months. What have you done? I've done 100 cold calls a month, or I've done 500 cold emails a month. It's like time and volume are different. You can do a lot of volume in a little bit of time, or you can do a little bit of volume in a lot of time. It doesn't matter. It's all based on volume. So, how do you get a client fast? You just do a lot of stuff fast. You're probably going to suck at it, but it's going to work. So like the fact that you just call those businesses, or maybe it was door knocking or whatever else, like that's a really common trait I see between people who grow their agencies fast, because realistically, you've grown your agency faster than, well, first off, most people fail, but most people do grow their agency. I think the average time to first client is probably more like 6 months. So that was a very fast turnaround.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think there's so many people who don't actually do the volume or they think that they're doing the right amount of volume, but I just hate the idea of trying something and then failing and just like giving up and like throwing in the towel. Because I know cold calls work. Like I know people who use them to make money. And so the idea that I couldn't do the same with like at least one client just
Sure.
seemed like foolish to me. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Well, now I want to pivot a little bit to Upwork. That's me a main conversation point of our interview, obviously being that that's, the way you mainly grew your agency. So what first got your interest in Upwork? And tell us about the process of first getting on Upwork and starting to apply to jobs.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. I actually got on Upwork first because I heard you talking about it. I heard you say that it's the easiest way for beginners to get clients because you don't have to sell yourself, or excuse me, you don't have to sell the service to the prospect. You just have to sell yourself. And so that was the exact experience that I've had the entire time on Upwork. And so I got on Upwork probably in June of 2023, sometime around there. Signed my first client in early August. The way I did it was much tougher than most people. I grinded it out, tried to get small jobs, get a few good reviews, get some, just like some money earned on my profile and some good reviews, have a little bit of trust, and then ended up signing a pretty large retainer. It was $1,600 a month from UpWork. It was just a social media management client. So fairly easy on the fulfillment side as well. And yeah, UpWork's been awesome for us. It's been super easy to sell. I think like there's really two main selling points on UpWork. The first is that like it's incredibly convenient. Like you essentially have an entirely built list of already qualified leads in one spot, and to contact them takes 2 clicks. Like it's unbelievably convenient. And then the second thing being, you don't have to sell people on the service. Like they're already completely convinced that they need your service. So you just have to convince them that, you know, you're a competent guy and that you can do it for them. And that's, you know, pretty easy.
Well, first off, I'm glad that you found advice on my channel, hopeful. So that's great to hear that. And second is, you know, your story is obviously it's a very successful one on Upwork, but it's not too dissimilar from more people hear of it. Hey, I went on Upwork and I signed the first deal in a month or two. And it's funny because there seems to be this weird ego thing around Upwork that I find, especially if young guys in kind of the agency space where it's, I'm an agency owner, I'm not a freelancer. But I think that's such a silly mindset to have, because you have companies ranging from startups to literally Fortune 500 who have an extreme high intent and they want what you sell. And also considering sales cycle, I sell large packages, 5 figures generally for cold email. My sales cycles are normally months from cold email or anything else, which is normal in my industry. On Upwork, it's days. They're looking to hire tomorrow. So quite literally going on Upwork, applying to jobs, you can have a client in like a day. And again, I sell cold email, but cold emails will take you 2 weeks to warm up, at least a week to get a meeting, and a week to close. Fastest you could probably do is a month to client. On Upwork, it could actually be tomorrow. I don't think there's many other platforms that are like that. So with yourself, I'm curious, what are some of the key takeaways from using Upwork? So if someone's listening, you're like, hey, fine, I'll try it. You know, what are some of the key things that you think allowed you to succeed?
Yeah, so there's a few things. One of them is just genuinely delivering a good service, because in reality, if you do get a few really bad reviews, like that is going to really screw you up, and it's going to really prevent you from signing larger contracts. And so like that's one thing. Like I provided a lot of value up front. Like my first 2 jobs were each for $60 each, and they took me like over 4 hours to fulfill on each of them. And so like obviously that's not great. You don't want to be working for $15 an hour, but I got 2 awesome reviews, 2 5-star reviews that were really in depth. And so it was super worth it. And my third client, who was a larger retainer for $1,600 a month, actually referenced those reviews when I was talking with him. And so like just actually providing value up front, like even if it's not ideal, getting a few really good reviews and a few dollars earned on your profile is super, super helpful. And yeah, the other thing, like you said, is just speed. Like I think there's a common, I guess there's 2 things. First, I think there's a common misconception that Upwork is only for cheap work. And it just like couldn't be more false. Like I've worked with low 8-figure and multiple 7-figure companies on Upwork. And the funny thing is, the sales calls with those companies are often the easiest. Like I've had sales calls where we sell $1,000 retainers and it takes less than 20 minutes. And it's just because like they have such a high intent, and you know, they want to hire now. And so I think that misconception is completely a misconception, and just like not really true at all.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more on that. And also, a lot of these companies that are huge are ones that, yes, you can cold email them, but not as a beginner. So, for example, I can book a meeting with a company that's doing 8 or 9 figures via cold email. It's a lot more work, but I can do it. But 7, 8 years ago, they would have no reason to talk to me. They talk to me now because of my social proof, my case studies. But on Upwork, you can just skip the line, which is awesome. And another thing that I think maybe people don't consider about Upwork is when selling to big businesses, the sales process is quite complicated because they want contracts, they want very specific invoicing. Sometimes they even want to confirm that you have business insurance. A lot of these elements that make selling to large companies hard. On Upwork, they're using Upwork as a middleman, so they don't really care. So it also makes your sales process easier logistically too. So that's just another big benefit of Upwork. Now, one question on Upwork, specifically on volume, is obviously we talked about getting your first earnings in a profile, either grinding it out, that's what I did as well, or you can have a client, if you have one, hire you there, whatever. How many jobs were you applying for per day on Upwork?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. At first, probably 5 to 10 a day, maybe somewhere in that range. But honestly, if you're personalizing them like you should be and writing good proposals using a template, a call to action, and some social proof, it doesn't take that long. Like people can tell that you're competent. And like another common misconception I hear is that Upwork is saturated or there's too much competition, which is like, sure, there's a ton of competition on Upwork, but you would be astounded as to how much of that competition is completely underqualified or their proposals are just terrible. Like I post jobs on Upwork and I've spent tens of thousands of dollars hiring people on Upwork, and I see dozens of proposals each week, and like at least 90% of them are terrible. They don't take the time to find my first name. It's just like a complete mess. And so I think getting on Upwork is kind of a no-brainer. Like it's not actually that saturated. And in terms of volume, like 5 to 10 a day, especially if you don't have clients, should be super easy. Like that doesn't take that long. And so that's what we were doing in the beginning. And then once we had like $7,000 or $8,000 earned on the platform of Upwork, I hired a VA to submit them for me, kind of systemize the process a little bit more. And then she was submitting between 50 to like 150 proposals per week.
One thing I like to mention here is, yes, there's competition on Upwork, but the competition is much worse than other platforms. Because let's say cold email or LinkedIn or cold calling, you're competing with 7, 8, 9-figure B2B service companies, right? There is legitimately very good competition. And there is some of that on Upwork, but most of your competition is like the college student making side income, or like the corporate guy who like has a side hobby, like business project. Few other just full-time freelancers, a couple agency owners, but most of your competition aren't necessarily bad. They're probably good at what they do, but they're more of not entrepreneurs. They're just looking for side work. So if you take entrepreneurial principles, you're going to be competing against a much easier talent pool. I mean, when you're competing against an 8-figure agency that has case studies of name brands, you're going to struggle. It's going to work if you keep pushing, but you're going to struggle. Where if the competition is just much lower. I don't think a lot of people consider that. Now, another
Yeah, and
question.
I
Sorry, go
think one
ahead.
more thing no worries. I think one more thing I'll add in is like there's over 10,000 jobs posted on Upwork every day. Like that is like there's so much opportunity on Upwork, and people just don't actually realize the extent of like how many jobs is 10,000 every single day.
Yeah.
Like if you're just applying to like 10 jobs a day, like you're gonna crush it.
Now, going off that high number of jobs, if you're curious, like, well, before I start on Upwork, how do I know? Simply go on Upwork, search your service, and see how many jobs come up. Also, as a search engine, Upwork's a bit funky. So like sometimes if you have like cold email versus cold emails, or like Facebook ads versus meta ads versus Instagram ads, the results are different. So play around with it. But getting to the point here, I'm curious, obviously you probably did some tracking on your applications. Do you happen to know roughly what your KPI was from like how many jobs you need to apply for to get a conversation?
Yeah, so our KPI, and I don't know when I was first starting, but like
Yeah.
right now, our KPIs are roughly 10% of proposals submitted send us a message, roughly 35 to 40% of messages book a call, and then I'm closing at like 30% on Upwork because people's intent is just so high, and like some months it's like 50%.
Yeah.
It's different than you because I don't sell that high ticket 5-figure service, and so it really is like super easy to close people on Upwork because especially if it's like a one-time, package for a few $1,000s, like a big company doing multiple 6, 7, or 8 figures, like they don't really care. It's like $2,000 is nothing to them. And so to be able to have the convenience of hiring someone right now who seems competent, who can just do the job, like even if it's a little more expensive, is totally worth it for them.
I completely agree with you there. And it's funny, so our KPIs are very similar. For me, it's 10 applications, 1 conversation, 3 conversations, 1 call. And then on the call, it depends what I'm selling. If I'm factoring down sales, it's around 25% close rate. If I'm factoring my core offer, it's a bit lower. But those numbers are pretty easy because you think if you're in a very broad service, like let's say social media management, there are probably 10,000 jobs for that per month posted. So, after you do all your filtering, there's probably 3 or 4,000 worth applying to. you're talking about a source that could potentially get you 50 to 100 calls a month. And there's no worrying about email deliverability. There's no worry about LinkedIn account limits or social media DM limits. A lot of the logistics that make other platforms competitive, which is fine. It's just the nature of business. You don't really have those. So it's just funny how you have this super easy opportunity with limited competition compared to other platforms, and you just have very little utilization. It's just such a bizarre thing.
Yeah, it really is crazy. Like you said, especially factoring in how many people own agencies. Like there's tons of agency owners out there, tons of different kinds of agencies, and all these other platforms for outreach are very saturated. It's tough to get jobs. Like I've done cold email before. I signed one client. Again, like I did cold calls, signed one client. And so like with Upwork, we've done over 50 deals, and it's by far the easiest platform for outreach.
One thing I think people fail to consider is like how many people are doing an agency. Like if you go to YouTube and you look up how to start an agency, there are videos of multiple millions of views. That means there are millions of people considering starting an agency. So, everything's gonna have competition. So we say Upwork has competition. You might be competing against 50, 60 people on a job, but you're talking from millions to 50, 60. It's reasonable. Now, I guess transitioning a little bit away from Upwork here, Nico, I want to know about you. So what are your long-term goals with business? So I know that you've recently kind of decided that not only you have your agency, but you're also considering, or not considering, you are helping people actually get onto Upwork, have the same success you had. So what are your goals with that?
Yeah, so I see this. I'm really, really excited for this because I think Upwork has just an enormous amount of opportunity there. And so like I think we're gonna get really, really good results for our clients. And I think it's an easy thing to charge like a small retainer for, or charge, a larger setup fee. And so in terms of goals, I want to scale this agency, the Upwork one, to over $1 million in sales. I think it's definitely doable. I think like I just mentioned, the opportunity on Upwork is just ridiculous. And so that's really the primary goal at the moment, is just focusing on the clients that we currently have. We've gotten amazing results for them so far. We're working with a video editing agency who added $7,000 in the first week. And so like really, really excited to keep working with them, and then just ultimately scaling this agency.
That's awesome. And a question for you now on a more personal side. Obviously, you started traveling recently. So is the goal to continue to travel around while building the business? Are you looking for a base? What do you see more personally?
That's a really good question. I don't know. Right now I'm in Argentina. I'll be in Chile in probably like a month or so. Then I'll go to Uruguay for a little bit. I grew up in Vermont, and so I honestly kind of like living outside the US. But I'm not really sure. I haven't found the base yet. I know that. I know I wouldn't want to live permanently in any of the countries that I've been to so far, but I think I would kind of like to find a base. Um, yeah, I'm gonna go to Asia probably in like 6, 7 months. Gonna explore Thailand, Dubai, see a few more countries out there, and so hopefully I'll find a base out there.
Well, cool. Well, Nico, as we're wrapping this up, there's a little bit of announcement too. Me and Nico have met a few times over the last, I don't know, period of 6 months or so. We've recently decided to partner on an offer to help with their Upwork. So if you're interested in having me and Nico help you with your Upwork, whether you already have an agency and you want to just add acquisition channel, or maybe you're starting out, there's a lot of opportunities there. So go ahead and drop me or Nico a message. And Nico, for where people can reach you, what's the best place? LinkedIn, Twitter?
Yeah, you can reach me on Twitter. My username, I assume, will just be in the
Yeah.
description, as well as my YouTube. Recently started on YouTube. It's all
There we
about
go.
Upwork client acquisition. So I have a handful of videos up there right now, and there's going to be a lot more to come over there.
All right. Thank you for coming on, Nico. It was great. And I'm looking forward to hopefully 6 months from now hearing somebody that listened to this interview. They said, fine, I'll try Upwork, and it worked for them. I know it's going to happen. It's going to help people. So again, appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
All right. Take it easy.